And welcome back. The National Child Protection Week is commemorated in the country annually to raise awareness of the rights of children as articulated in the Constitution.
Yeah, Minister of Social Development Lindiwe Zulu launched the campaign over the weekend, and it seeks to mobilise all sectors and communities towards embracing the holistic development, care and protection of children.
Well, for more on this story, we are now joined by the Minister, Lindiwe Zulu. Minister, good morning and thank you so much for making time for us. What's the message that the department is trying to portray with this theme, protecting children beyond COVID-19?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm sure yourselves there you will carry on with the message, because the message is about ensuring that children of South Africa are protected from their homes, they are protected, on the streets they are protected, in schools they are protected. Parents also must take care of the children. So the bigger message coming from the department, even though we are focused on children who are orphaned, we are saying let us get rid of all the vulnerabilities that are experienced by children throughout the value chain of their lives in general.
Yeah. Minister, talk to us about some of the activities that have been planned then by your department for the week, because there's certainly, I can imagine, is going to be lots of dialogue and really also tracking how we're faring as a country in protecting our children.
Yes, thank you. From yesterday when the launch happened, already we had the children themselves speaking out, because I think one of the things that we don't take very seriously in our families, in our homes, is about listening to the children. We have to listen to children, and we also have to communicate to the children what life is all about, what is expected of them at school, what is expected of them at home, what is expected of them just around life in general. But that will not happen if, for instance, parents are unable to engage with the children. The children are simply asking us to listen to them. The children are simply saying, create a conducive environment for us to learn, create a conducive environment for us to be safe, create a conducive environment for us to get food, and food that has got nutrition. Right now, we are in a very interesting place called the Homestead, empowering children. It is a place where NPOs, and NPOs specifically, they bring the children here after school. They do aftercare for the children, but they also offer psychosocial support for the children who come in here. Right now, I'm just from the kitchen, which is very nice. The children will be coming from school and they'll be having something to eat, because again, many of them come from families where there isn't much. But let me just say this also. It's important for parents to pay attention to their children. It's important for parents to understand what are the challenges and the problems that their children are going through. It is important for parents not to abdicate responsibility and leave that responsibility to teachers and schools, and leave that responsibility to other people other than themselves as parents.
Yeah. And Minister, another important one is, of course, the cholera outbreak that we've seen in Tshwane as well as the Free State. What is the department doing to protect children from such vulnerabilities when it comes to bacteria like cholera, for instance? And who should be held accountable? Because essentially these children also rely on this water, and it's supposed to be potable water.
Yes, the proficiency and efficiency of people who have to be responsible for the provision of water, who have to be responsible for ensuring that the water is safe, who have to be responsible for ensuring that water, as water is life, is delivered on time, should take responsibility of this. And I think that from a national government point of view, I've seen the minister. In fact, when this happened, I happened to be the acting minister for Minister Mchunu, because he had gone to Lesotho. Again, it's a question of water that he had gone there with the president. I was acting, and the first thing that I had to do was to call my Department of Social Development to say to the MEC at a provincial level, what is it that they are going to be doing, particularly because already we had lost lives. We needed to go to the families, Sioba Duduza in a way, but Ukduduza on its own is not enough. It is about us ensuring that we put systems in place that are preventative. It's always about preventing. And so those who have to take the responsibility, and I'm sure that at national level, the president and the minister will do what they need to do to make sure that they take responsibility, but also at a provincial level and local level, the municipalities that are supposed to be taking care of this, they must take responsibility. As a department, our role and responsibility is also to advocate and say to all the other departments, we can only be able to do our work if all other areas of life are taken care of. Here I'm talking about health, I'm talking about education, I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm talking about roads, because as a department, we can have our social grants, we can protect people from that point of view, from hunger and all. And economic development is also very important. So we are advocating for an efficient government that also delivers, because as far as social development is concerned, we are responsible for the well-being of citizens, but that well-being cannot happen if all the other departments are not up to scratch in ensuring that people are serviced.
Yeah. Minister, a little bit earlier, I had a conversation with the director of the Teddy Bear Foundation as well as the director of Childline. And one of the things the key things that came out of that discussion, I think, for me, was that children certainly, I think, in urban areas are aware of services like Childline or are able to call to get assistance. But for the most part, it is children in the vulnerable areas like Hammanskraal and even further afield when you go into rural areas that lack not just the education around their rights and how they need to be protected, but also services of where to go when they are vulnerable. I mean, where are we in really plugging those very critical gaps?
This critical gap for me starts really at community level. And that's the reason why, for instance, when the president launched the district development model, was to address exactly infrastructure, address communication, address all access at a local level, where people at a local level must know. It's also about communication. And as a department through SASSA, remember that we pay social grants to more than 18 million people. I then said to SASSA, to the CEO and those that are responsible for communication, this is an opportune moment for us to communicate to the social grant recipients beyond just the issue of their grants. What are other things that we can talk to them about? And you know what? SASSA has stepped up and make sure that they get the information about prevention of cholera, what people must do. So they communicated to the grant recipients what is expected of them to do. So that's where we need to start. But also it's about this information being in the families, being in the schools, and ensuring that the information, when it is given to people, it's empowering. It's not just information for the sake of ticking in the box that we did communicate. While I'm also at this, we are responsible as the Department of Social Development for supporting families. Here where I am at Homestead, when the children come here, we have social workers who are here, we have auxiliary workers who are here. They also run programs for families and parenting. This is what we need to upscale as a Department of Social Development, and that's the reason why we support NPOs. I've repeatedly said we spend 8.2 billion every year giving it to NPOs, because NPOs are on the ground. They should be the extension of government, and they should be accountable also for the money that is being given to them by government.
Right.
Minister, what about when children themselves actually are the ones who become criminals? Here, for instance, yesterday, where your deputy was in KwaZulu-Natal, we heard the story of a 14-year-old girl who was arrested for murdering her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. So these are children who are also in conflict with the law.
Let's start again going back to the family. What produces a child of that age to go and be so brave to commit a crime like that? Let's go back to what happens in the family. Why does a 14-year-old or 12-year-old or 13-year-old believe that solving a problem, you will solve it that way? They do that because they see that happening in their communities. They do that because they see, some of them amongst their parents, issues of violence happening, and they automatically think that this is a normal thing to do. That's why, as a Department of Social Development, we believe we must go back and do much more in strengthening families, upscaling the work that we do, but also ask the NPOs and NGOs, but also get the schools not to ignore the fact that these children come from traumatized environment. They are traumatized themselves. I mean, how does a 14-year-old go and kill a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Something is wrong back where the child comes from. And as society and as communities, that's where we need to go to. As a department, also, by the way, I want to take this opportunity and say that what we saw also of the children who were put in boxes, newborn babies put in boxes, we've got to do something about that. Somebody has to answer for that, because as a Department of Social Development, we work with the Department of Health, and we are saying to the Department of Health, what we say about creating a conducive environment for our people, one of those things that need to be done is to make sure that we don't have such incidences happening in hospitals.
Yeah. Minister, one last one before we let you go, and we know that you're obviously having a very busy day on you, but this coming out of the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health saying that there's been a sharp decline in child immunization since the outbreak of COVID-19. I think it's true that since COVID-19, our focus certainly has shifted, the focus of parents. What's your message to parents around particularly immunization and the health of their children?
The health of the children entirely depend on what the parents do. And that's why, for instance, as our theme, we started by saying is that we are supporting children during COVID and beyond. I mean, yesterday they were asking me, why are you talking about COVID when COVID is gone? But the fact of the matter is that COVID, there are lessons that had to be learned from COVID. We needed to change our behavior. We needed to wash our hands. We needed to keep distance. We needed to ensure that we do the right thing. The same lessons that we learned during COVID are the lessons that now need to be implemented, and parents must make sure that the health of their children also depend on immunization. If you don't immunize your child right at the beginning, and this immunization is accessible at clinics and all, and it's free of charge, the call is parents must take responsibility. Take your child for immunization. You will be reducing problems in the future.
Yeah. Minister, an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Minister of Social Development there, Minister Lindiwe Zulu.